Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with the very handsome Janoah van Kekem. Janoah is a consultant and mentor, helping purpose-driven business owners and CEOs get their time back and create more freedom in their life while still growing their businesses. In this week's episode, expect to learn about the badge of honor so many of us carry, the stories we tell ourselves about being successful, the importance of knowing your vision for your business and your personal life, letting your values drive your decisions, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. It's Janoah, guys. Janoah van Kekem, welcome to the podcast.
Yes. Vanekas, happy to be
Vanekas, new one. That's a new one. That might run for a bit. Mate, we've parted ways. It's almost been a year now since we parted ways. It's quite a while.
Yeah. It's the last retreat in Momentum.
Yeah. When do we part ways on Momentum? June, actually more than a year. June.
It was June. And then we still had the retreat, the psychedelic stuff was still sort of in the background, and then we decided to pull that and do our own thing as well.
So it's exciting. It's almost like a little recap of life in the last 12 months. Like, for those that are new to your work, can you give them a 60 to 90 second spiel of what you do in today's world?
Cool. What I do is I work with mainly business owners and leaders to help them avoid burnout and really optimize their potential in their mind so they can get back to building a business that they love, that gives them energy as opposed to drains their energy. So what I found is there's so many business owners out there, and you almost, when you start business, there's a level of excitement and passion. You've got this cool idea, and then you're sort of 3 to 5 years in, and I think for a lot of people, one of the core reasons for creating their own business is for a level of freedom, right? Like, have a bit of control over your life. And what I see a lot of is they end up getting so caught in the day-to-day and they're fucking stressed. And 3 to 5 years later, they're almost like, fuck, what have I created? And they've almost like lost the passion and drive for this amazing dream they've had. And there's so much potential, because these business owners are a different kind of breed. To step out and to be able to do your own thing. You know this, right? You've got to be able to handle uncertainty, pressure, stress, and moving beyond fear all the time. And so there's often like a huge amount of potential in these people. And I call these people like visionaries. They're the ones who want to have an impact, want to do something different and here to leave a legacy in the world. And so there's this huge potential that's there. But often what I find is we end up getting caught up in the day-to-day, and that you're getting lost in the workings and operations of the business. We've kind of almost lose sight of this greater vision and find ourselves just stuck in it. And so that's the sort of the sweet spot of where I love to come in and work with these business owners and leaders who are here to have an impact, but are kind of stuck and almost lost sight of the bigger vision.
Do you think when someone's setting out to create a business, it'd be interesting actually to see where this shows up for you. Do you think, so they're visionaries, they've obviously got a vision for the business. Do they not have a vision for their own life and lifestyle, or does that get lost? Because there appears to be the need for two visions, a vision for a business and a vision for your own lifestyle. Do they not consider it, or does it just get lost?
You've actually nailed the vision piece right there without meaning to. Is I think there's actually a split. There's half that are like, I want to create a lifestyle I love, right? And they're like, how do I create this? And then there's the other half who are like, I see an opportunity in the market to make big money and create a big business. And they focus down that way and are willing to sacrifice a lot of their lifestyle to create this amazing business. So there's two pieces to it. And I think with both of them, often what happens is the first person who not only saw the vision for the business, but also a vision for their lifestyle, they often can lose the lifestyle component of the vision because the business just sucks the life out of them. And then the other group who are just here to create an epic business and solve a problem get to a point where they're like, is this it? So they both often end up finding themselves in the same position, even having a slightly different driver in the first place, where it's like, cool, I'm making some money here. The business is growing. I'm fucking stressed. Started sacrificing my health, my relationship, my life for it. Is this it? And sort of it's kind of funny how they both set out quite differently, but find themselves. I think the visionaries in terms of the lifestyle ones come around quicker. That's always in the back of their mind. It's like, hang on a second, I just need to push through this next year or two, and then I can finally start having a lifestyle again. One more year, then I can start doing, focusing on my health. One more year, then I can start with relationship work. And it kind of next minute, it's 5, 10 years past, and they're in it.
What do you think is at the core of that sacrifice? So the whole, like, just one more year, just 6 months, and their partner's like, are you serious, mate? You've been saying that for the last 5 years. Do you reckon it's limiting beliefs? Do you think it's almost like a subtle slumber that they fall into? Like, because sacrifice is a really interesting word. Everyone has their different interpretations of it and beliefs around it. But I still, in today's world, probably more so than ever, I still struggle with the concept of sacrificing your family in order to build a business. So it's from what I've seen, and we work with similar people in coming from different angles. There's a lot of these guys who will sacrifice just about everything for profits, health, friendships, family.
Yeah.
Is it a limiting belief? Because for some of them, I reckon they think it's honorable, because there is an old story around how honorable it is to sacrifice yourself, your own mental health for the family. Like, what have you noticed about the dialogue that they tell themselves around sacrifice?
It's interesting because I think for a lot of them, there's a multiple different things, but a lot of there's one part's like almost something to prove, where they've got to like prove themselves to whoever that may be, mum, dad, peers, that they can do it and make it work. And that need to be, for validation, to prove that they could do it, overrides everything. And also, I think when we're primed younger, I don't know about you, but I was never primed that it was so important for me to be emotionally connected to my partner, or to be super healthy and fit and care about what I eat. I was primed about build a big career, make money, buy a house. And so I think a lot of external, and you think about the old school mindsets of a lot of our parents would also be probably down that route. And so I think at the core for a lot of it, it's around proving something. And a lot of our metrics on success are around wealth and money, and thinking that that's going to solve everything. And don't get me wrong, I fucking love money, and money does some great things and provides great opportunities and can provide a level of freedom. But I feel like we're driven by a very narrow idea of what success is, and then this core need to prove something or feel a level. And I personally know that too, in terms of like a driver for me is like, I just want to almost prove to myself as well, and my family and friends, that I could do this and make it work. And that has even taken priority. It's like, cool, this is number one. With me, like the relationship stuff's going to be in the background a little bit. So I'm like, nah, first I need to be successful, make money, all this, and then I can be at my best and be fully loved, blah, 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 blah. And so that is often one of the core. There's two pieces of what we're externally told is success. And then is there something to prove for us as we go?
Do you think a lot of guys, I would say the majority of guys, if we're talking guys for this context, tell themselves it's for the family because that looks a lot more honorable? And I wonder in your world whether they know that there's other reasons that they're doing it, e.g. status, prove to the dad, prove that they're worthy. And it's all kind of, it sits under this honorable, I'm doing it for my family. Or do you I wonder if guys actually believe that 100% of their drive for success is this pure, clean intention of doing it for the family, of which that is extremely honorable, or there's undercurrents. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys end up losing their family anyway. So was it really for the family if you lose them? Or was there a point to prove, your ego's tied into it? There's a wound that is the driver behind it. It feels quite murky waters.
I think a lot of them are unconscious to that fact. They're telling themselves a story. Like we talk about blind spots. I think for most of them, they've told that story so much, they believe it, and they're just in their own head until it comes to a point where something fucking breaks and they're like, oh, hang on a minute. Or they work with someone who reflects it back and is like, well, you really I've been working with a guy not long ago, and he's made bank. I don't think generations of his family need to work again, but still, and noticing his relationship was fucking struggling. And it took some conversations, like some pretty honest ones, to be like, fuck, bro, like, what are you really doing here? And then you could see it start to click in his mind. It was almost like, it was wild to see this super powerful, like high influence male suddenly almost become this uncertain, like almost like a boy. He was like, sorry, man, like, I don't know. And I was like, it was just wild to see that layer unpeel. And there was a level of vulnerability there, which was brilliant, but he was fucking terrified by. And that's the other piece again. It's around even that there when he started to, because often for these, if you're driving or growing big business, you need to kind of have it together. And there's a level of vulnerability that he kind of started to show that he didn't think was going to help him grow. It was going to be a weakness and literally like hold him back. So I think a lot of it is an unconscious, but also a level of, I need to be this kind of driven, sacrifice everything guy to be respected and to be successful.
What stories do you think are around sacrifice for a lot of these guys when you start to pull it apart? Because it can come from a place of scarcity for some of them. It can even, I assume, come from a place of ego, of sacrifice, like that type of energy. What do you notice as the common threads and stories that sit behind the belief that they have to sacrifice everything, including themselves?
I think a big one is the story they tell that they're like, naturally as a male, right, being the provider is a core driver for us, whether we're conscious about it or not. But what that looks like, I think, is where it gets cloudy. And I think it becomes very one-dimensional, that they think, providing is money. And so their role as the male is to provide and make money. And that's their job. And they're forgetting what else comes under the idea of providing in terms of safe space and connection and love and intimacy and all these other ways that you can lead in a relationship. So I think it's a lack of clarity around what providing is, but also then the ability to bypass having to step into all that fucking murky shit, right? Because if your role is just, I'm doing this to provide my family, and you just stick to that story, the door's shut. The story's there, it's clean. This is what I'm doing the right thing. And you don't have to open that door to, well, what are other areas that I can provide for my family that I don't know how to, or don't want to, or feel awkward about. So there's a few different levels to it. I actually generally think that just caught up in that story. That's what they're here to do. And for some excuse, if things aren't great at home, where do you escape to? Too busy, gonna go to some work. Great escape. With half the guy you work with, like, fucking put that shit over here, and I'm just gonna go get busy with work, and then gonna go out for work drinks, of course, after that. And then that's the way to sort of numb and block what's actually going on.
I also think one of the challenges for a lot of guys and women, I guess, but like guys, they also don't have the skills around relationships. So my guess is that some guys actually think the answer is more money and more status, in terms of, maybe she'll fuck me if I have a bigger business, or a bigger, if that kind of material status positioning, they probably think it's the answer. Just like some guys think, if they haven't had sex for fucking months, maybe I'll go and get ripped and that will be the answer. Yeah, you probably look a little bit more desirable, but at the end of the day, if there's no connection or anything else, it's probably not going to solve all your problems.
Well, actually, this brings up a comment that you made the other day, which was one that I found really interesting in terms of the love language concept in relationship. Remember, we were speaking of that, and the idea that us as for a lot of us, like, the love language is, if we create more money and buy them more shit, they should be happy, of course, right? And not having any idea of, well, how does your partner want to receive love? And for a lot of them, it's gifts might not be very high at all. It might be, words of affirmation, touch, spending quality time, whatever it is. And I agree, we're not educated at all. Like, I look at my upbringing, like, I wasn't fucking educated around that kind of stuff. I don't fucking know. You just see, you follow the people with the fancy cars, and, you got to be rich or famous or good looking, and be like, cool, that's what I need to do. And that's what we focus on. And so we're missing a whole piece of the puzzle. But it's also fucking uncomfortable for a lot of us to have to go down that path and start exploring it. I remember, like, that was a fucking cringe for me. I don't want to go down that emotional route and open up this beautifully protected, guarded.
The guard. It'd be really interesting. I don't know. I know finances is a stress for many, but I wonder when it comes to like divorces and breakups, whether my guess is that the majority of the divorces and breakups, if you were to kind of really distill it down, is a lack of like connection, time, quality time with the partner as opposed to not enough money, would be my guess.
Again, and similar guess to me from what
Yeah.
I've seen, it'd be a lot of them. The problem is money's the band-aid, 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 band-aid on top of actually what's the core fucking, which is communication, sex, whatever it is, and that's where the issue comes from. Funnily enough, and then that ends up costing way
Fucking
money.
millions, millions, brother. Cost them a fucking bomb.
Yeah.
What do you do? So let's say that you start working with a business owner and vision's obviously a really big piece. Do many of these guys think about the vision that they want for themselves? Or if you came into the conversation, does it automatically go to vision of the company?
Yeah. Most of the time, what first drops to mind is like strategic vision, X amount of growth, this amount of time. And that's where it's all about. It's like, and that's when we start sort of pulling it apart and we start unraveling the concept of like purpose and lifestyle. It's like, cool. All right. So you want to hit X amount of revenue target. And how do you want your life to be? Do you want to be working 50 hours a week and stuck in the business? Or do you want to be working 25 hours a week and actually having a lifestyle? And I remember one of the first personal development guys I was into was Tim Ferriss. And he had this new rich equation where it actually, I can't remember the exact equation off the top of my head, but it actually looked at your hourly rate, what you're earning versus the amount of hours you're doing. And someone, earning fucking $1 million, but working 60 hours a week was actually in this equation poorer than the person earning 100K a year, but doing 25 hours a week. And we get caught up in the idea of that, more money, more freedom, more success. And so we start pulling apart, well, cool. Which is great. We've got to have financial targets. Awesome. What does that look like? And then what does your lifestyle look like? But then also the piece which I love to work with, which is what's the impact of your business organization, right? It's like, well, so if you hit X financial target, what lives have you changed? Have you shifted something in industry? If people were to look back at your company in terms of if they've worked for you or if they've been a client of yours, like how did you change their life? What did you stand for as a company beyond that? And that's that core like purpose piece, which is what most people don't even really consider. They'll create a marketing mission statement, which is just marketing, and the marketing values on the wall, which they put up on their website very proudly, but no one actually knows what the fuck they mean. No one's actually embodying them. And there's a huge disconnect between that, which actually causes more damage than good. And so the first piece is, and often and this is where those two different people come back in again, where the visionaries who started a business for a lifestyle, they're a lot quicker to go, yeah, I do want this lifestyle and this is the purpose, but I've kind of lost sight of that because I've been so caught in just trying to grow this fucking thing and keep my head above water and I'm stressed to the eyeballs, versus the ones who started a business because they saw a business opportunity and they were like, well, I guess we just build till I'm 65 and then I get to retire and as I'm old and decrepit because I've never looked after my body and my health, and then I get to enjoy my millions, then. And for them, it's more of a, okay, and it's more, I've got to pull it out. So what impact do you want to have? What's your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to live? And it takes a bit longer for them to start pulling that, but it's also exciting. I love the look of when someone first starts going, oh wow, imagine if I could leave this impact on the world or have this impact on the industry. There's always things that they're like frustrated by, but when it first starts dropping, it's like, well, I can live that kind of life. Like it's acceptable. I'm not being a lazy fucker if I only work, 25 hours a week. There's also that ties into that, the hustle culture, which I remember when I used to live in Sydney. I still remember this conversation so much. I was talking to a bunch of guys in finance, and that Monday afternoon I'd been for a swim in the afternoon and blah blah, and I was like looked at with ultimate judgment of like, what are you even doing? I was like, hang a second, have I not won? I couldn't get, then I started feeling shame. I was like, oh fuck, I should be hustling more for the sake of fucking hustling, because that means I'm actually worth something more. These guys look down at me because I was working less, and so all these beliefs and stories and need to start becoming unraveled, which those ones can be harder to push as well, because there's a level of like, comparison in your circle. How's stressed and busy? Yeah, you know, under the pump, blah, blah. And there's almost like a badge of honor. So we talk about vision, but then all these other little components start getting added to it that we sort of need to look at first. And then we go back to the vision again.
It's such a bizarre concept that stress equals success, of which that equals the badge of honor.
Yep.
Like similar to you when we lived in Sydney, it almost was like my dick was bigger if I was really stressed.
Yeah.
Like I was the man.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah. You could see how big my dick was, or
you're stressed, bulge, which is it. Funny.
Yeah. I couldn't, when I was really stressed, I couldn't wear budgies because my dick was so big it didn't fit in. Like that's how big dick my energy was.
Yep.
It takes a bit to break away from that. You and I are now 5 years out of Sydney, have broken away from that nicely. But I couldn't think of anything less successful these days than someone super stressed. Like how you show up and feel on a Monday morning for me is one fucking excellent metric to how successful you are. Like, how do you feel? Are you excited? Are you calm? Are you clear? Are you intentional? Or are you already fucking anxious, 2 coffees deep, scattered, overwhelmed, hungover, dreading Monday to Friday, wishing it was Friday night already? That is like the pinnacle of unsuccessful for me now.
When that comes to like really getting clear on what does it look like for you, and that's often a common challenge and question is there's almost like the need, they'll say it's like, I need to redefine what success is because I've kind of lost sight of it. I'm kind of stuck in it, and all the things that I've tried to move away from, I'm kind of in now, but am I successful because I've made some money and the brand is recognized now, and it's a whole little level of like, let's redefine what that actually looks like for you. Which
it's hard for a number of reasons. One is because a lot of people have built their identity around it, and you're literally asking someone to reshape their identity. Yeah. 2, there's a good chance that they will get judged by others.
Yep.
So if you're trying to break someone's identity and you're trying to essentially break away from someone's biggest fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not belonging, like those 2 things take a lot to break.
Yeah.
Massive.
True. And that identity piece is one of the core pieces to work on in terms of what's your identity currently. What is the identity of the person who has what you want once we've peeled away the layers and got clear on the vision, and then where are the gaps? And that's where the work is. That's the process, because that isn't just like an overnight, oh, I'm just going to become this person now. It's constant, like bit by bit. What are the behaviors? You know, what are my values? Like, is my current behavior in alignment with that? Are the people I hang out with in alignment with that? Is how I spend my nights in alignment with that? Is how I think and what I read in alignment with that? There's so many pieces of the puzzle in terms of evolving to the new, and identity houses everything who you've based yourself on for the last X amount of years. So it's not a small thing just to flick overnight, which is why it's a process, and which is why also a core piece of that is working at an internal level in terms of releasing old build-up trauma, stress, tension. Because if you're hanging on to that, it makes it almost impossible for you to step into the new identity. Because if you are constantly stressed, you are focused on survival, and survival means staying the same, and survival means searching for the familiar, which means searching for the old patterns, the old environments, the old people, the old ways of thinking and being, because that is safe for us. So this is where a lot of people, I think, fall down, is they might even have an idea of like, okay, this isn't quite right, I want to shift over here, but they're running off a fucking stress program. And so their ability to think more expansively and to try something new and to move into the unknown becomes, and even, you know, they might do a mindset workshop, but the chances of that actually sticking are so small if they're running on a stress, like, I'm eating well, I'm training well, I'm reading these mindset books. Why the fuck's nothing happening? Well, because you're fucking stressed 24/7. And that's the core, that's like foundation piece, which is why when most people come to me, I'm like, cool, tell me about are you using breath work? Are you meditating? What are you doing? And they're like, I'm trying a few apps now, but I just want to do this stuff. I'm like, no, let's go back to the core foundation here. And unless you're willing to work on the core foundation, the other stuff's going to have a lesser impact and be so much harder to change. I think is where a lot of people struggle with the quick hacks and the self-help books is they haven't gone to the core yet first.
Well, the irony, I think you and I obviously are on a similar path over the last 5 years. The irony is that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Like if I think about, I don't know how you were feeling in Sydney, but if I think about myself, my intention for change was always good. But because I was so stressed, my ability to actually grip when it came to change was limited. Like there's such a dysregulation in my nervous system, such a level of stress that I was just burning through energy with the intent to create change. If I think about, over the last 5 years, shifting massively from a very dysregulated human to quite regulated, like if I think about creating change now, there's very little doubt in me that it's going to happen because I just have time, I have space, I have capacity. I'm more grounded than I've been and my nervous system is quite regulated. All of those fundamentals and foundations make it a lot easier for me to create change now. Like if I think about some of our friends in Sydney who are fucking stressed and they're like, I'm on this health kick. I'm like, no, you've been here 10 times and I know it's not going to last and we're going to talk about this again in 3 months' time. That like just that stress and that angst just makes it really hard to grip change.
Yeah. And also in terms of looking at what you actually value. Like I know you actually value growth. That's a core intrinsic value of yours. And there's a clear intention. And so a lot of your time and energy and money is spent around it. While you then have to question the other people, like, do they actually really value that idea of growth and change? Or are they just saying they kind of do, but they spend all their time and money drinking and being busy and whatever else. And then there's nothing left in the tank for 20 minutes at night of reading a book and then wonder why things haven't changed. It's also really good to look at what do you say you value versus how do you behave and where's the gaps there. And you know what, if you genuinely don't value growth, then you generally don't value growth. Let's just fucking own it. Be like, well, what do you what do you value then? And because it's going to be so much easier for you to behave in alignment with what you value. It might look different for everyone. Like the thing I also remember is not everyone wants to always grow. Fine. No, there's nothing wrong with that.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because we also sometimes like, oh, should's one of the worst things ever. Like I should be meditating more. I should be doing this. Well, okay, why? What's the end of that? And when you can start looking at the why connected to that, it's like, that's the motivator. And that can also help people be like, okay, cool. So it's not that I should meditate. It's because if I meditate, I'll actually be more clear and focused at work, which means I can make better decisions, which means I can make more money. Okay, I value fucking money. Now I see the value in meditating. So that's kind of a way to work back around that as well.
I think the other thing that's going to be really interesting, and I remember having this conversation with a number of clients at the back end of last year, is obviously we can speak really clearly to the former busy life because we've both been there and had our struggles within it. But as you start to kind of close the loop on 2024, my guess is that every single person just about on planet Earth has been busy this year. You get to Christmas, you get to the end of the year. How's your year? Yeah, I was busy. Sweet. So show me or point to what and where and how you've actually moved the needle forward. Because you're busy at work, you're busy at training, you're busy, but what did you actually do this year that moved the needle forward? Tell me how you got stronger. Tell me how you got leaner. Tell me how you have deeper relationships with your partner. Tell me how you've saved more money. Tell me how your business has grown. Most people, I'm guessing above 95%, if you ask them at the end of this year, put your finger on where things were at the start of the year and where they are now, most people won't be able to. Been busy, and they'll tell you how busy they've been. It doesn't mean shit. Can you point to what has changed this year? Most people can't.
And that comes back to what are you working towards? It's the vision piece again. You're like, cool, I've been busy and I've moved 4 steps closer to creating this thing that I want to create in the next 5 or 10 years. And so again, a lot of us are caught in literally this, like having no vision and no clear purpose is literally like getting out in the ocean and being like, I'm going to fucking paddle my ass off. So I'm going to get the furthest out. And you're fucking paddling. And you're like, where the fuck am I? I've paddled far. And I think I'm ahead of everyone else. But I guess I just keep fucking paddling. So and you're fucking tired and versus someone who has a vision. It's like, I want to get to that island because that island looks tropical and I can get a tan and it's got good healthy food and I can, relax. And so you're like, this is where I want to head and this is why. And you're paddling in direction. So you can look at the end of the year and go, I'm actually closer to this fucking island that I wanted to get to versus I've paddled my ass out, but I don't know where I am. And I don't know where I'm going. And that's the trap of busy and grinding and like business, I mean, for the sake of it versus intentional to create something that will serve yourself and your life and your family, but also serve the world in some capacity. And that should be exciting.
What do you reckon? Let's say someone from Sydney or Melbourne or London, wherever, wanted to escape the rat race and just do life differently and have, I guess some would say that we're quite balanced with the different areas of our life. What do you remember being limiting beliefs or stories or behaviors that you had to overcome as you transitioned from Sydney to Byron and now obviously from Byron to Goldie? But like what, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to break free of the story, break free of, what's familiar. What do you remember being some of the things that you had to overcome?
Definitely stress being a badge of honor and that I operated better when there's a sweet spot for me. Like if I've got nothing going on, I don't operate well. But if I've got a couple, everyone's got their own sweet spot, right? You've got almost the lever where it's like we've got the good stress, you step up, you're challenged, your performance goes up, and there's a little lever where it's different for all of us that it flicks over, and then we're distressed, and then our performance goes down. So I lived in distress, thinking that was when I was on. And I was hungover and fucking loading on coffee and, scattered and blah, blah. So the first piece was like getting over the idea that stress helped me perform better. The other one was, it was about what working harder was the key. And this is the zone of genius work to do as well, where it's around, no. Like being busy and working hard for the sake of it. Like you gotta fucking work hard sometimes. Hell yeah, but on the right thing. And again, in alignment to what you want to create, in alignment to like what is your zone of genius, in alignment to things that give you energy and fucking light you up and are having an impact. And so the big shift for me was around like sometimes I would just do things for the sake of doing things, checking emails, and if there was nothing to do, I'd be like, oh, I should feel guilty because I'm not doing anything right now. And it means I'm a piece of shit. You know what I mean?
Absolute piece of shit. If you're not stressed, then why are you even on planet Earth?
Yeah. They were two of the cores for the core ones for me to overcome. And then I guess the piece that allowed me to do that was because when you're in it, you don't know. Like when you were back in your days in Sydney and I was back in my days in Sydney, we weren't sitting there going, oh, we're stressed. I wonder if there's something better out there. Like if we're in it. And so
what do you think you would have told someone if they told you that at that situation? The reason why, I don't know if you had anyone. The reason I say that is because Mardo made the jump before I did. Mardo moved up to Caloundra, and his opinion for me is as important as anyone's, as one of my best mates and a voice that I really turn to. And I remember him it just felt like every bit of stress had just fallen out of his system. And I remember him talking about Caloundra, and obviously I was never really connected to Caloundra, but talking about the lifestyle. And I conceptualized the idea of like, yeah, it looks like you're less stressed, but like, I just thought I would die if I didn't have stress. Like life would be boring. And the stories that I used to tell myself, I looked at him and I was like, you do look like you're living a better life. But it couldn't compute. How could I leave a major city? How could I leave Melbourne? How could I leave Sydney? Like I might as well retire if I'm going to move to a smaller town. Like, do you remember anyone in your world who was a representation of the life that we live now and your perception of them at the time?
Yeah. So what it was for me, it was more around performance. So what led me to the idea of managing my stress, etc., was I was always interested in performing better. How can I be better, do more, achieve more, make more money, whatever it looked like. And so that was what actually pulled me in the direction of looking at, again, I'll use Tim Ferriss as one of the OGs for me, of looking at, this guy only works how many hours a week? Whether he actually works 4 or not, I don't think so. But, this is okay. And he's a high performer. So I was like, okay, so high performance isn't always about just working 10 hours, isn't about working 10 hours a day. It's different. And then there was a clear correlation between, at that time, it was all around meditation and mindfulness as a way to reduce stress and increase performance. So that was what's the first time I started to shift. I was like, this isn't because the idea of moving to Byron Bay then, I remember Mum said to me when I was in Bondi, and I was like, I'm never leaving this place. And if someone said, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not going there with the hippies to fucking chill out and I'll go insane. You know what I mean? But performance, it was like, so what I'm saying here is that you don't have to jump to fucking moving to Byron. It's like, what is it that you want to do more of or be better at? And I guarantee you that stress is holding you back from that. And so for me, it was around that performance piece, and then being exposed to people who were in Sydney who were high successful performers who also managed their stress and nervous systems via practices like meditation and breath. And I shifted my idea of what that meant. So it shifted to someone who is living a relaxed lifestyle, who's still successful and performing, but not working lots of hours a day. I was like, that's the attractive piece. Like I started respecting these people, and I was like, it was kind of a slow unraveling for me, and seeing that just because you lived on a beach in a smaller town doesn't mean you're a fucking lazy hippie, and started seeing expanders, representations of that. But it wasn't me intentionally looking for them. They kind of started dropping in. I was like, and I had to come from people that I respected and be like for you and Marta, I was like, okay, and when people told me, go fuck yourself. But if subtly the representations came to me and I could find my own way there, I had to find my own way there. You know what it's like? Like, whether you're trying to tell your partner or your friend or your sister, you should do this, they resist. And the next minute, a year later, they just watch you do your thing, and they're finally ready. And they're like, so I've been noticing you've been doing this thing here, or, you got to kind of, it's like, how do you plant the seed enough for them to see it and then let them, and I'm very strong-willed, and I had to come there my own way.
What would you do? So if you look at this 5 years we've been out of Sydney with no regrets and everything's, generally run pretty smooth other than a few fucking hiccups. But what would you do differently if you were transitioning out of a stressed city life to a not stressed at all? I don't know how you feel. Generally speaking, I would consider myself not stressed at all. What would you do differently if you had to add your time again over the last 5 years?
What would I have done differently? And I moved to Byron from Sydney.
Yeah. Or even transitioning out of Sydney. Would you have done anything differently?
I don't think so. I guess the only thing that I would have done differently, which was a habit that a destructive pattern that I had, was I would reach a level of success and growth and then sabotage the fuck out of it by, instead of going like, I'm going to go have a 2-week break, I'd be like, I'm going to go travel the world for 3.5 months.
It was a good one. What you did.
And a couple of years later, you know what? I should do that again.
I didn't learn last time. I'm going to go and do it again.
And that was just one of my own sabotage patterns, which maybe isn't necessarily all that relevant specifically, but that'd be the only thing that I'd be like, dude, like, notice what you're doing here. That's probably the only one that comes to mind now in terms of what I would do differently if I had the level of awareness then.
Yeah. It was pretty smooth overall. I think probably I would never imagine myself being in a cafe because I'd be incompetent, but I loved Shani's idea of putting herself in an environment where she could meet a lot of people. That was probably, we found that a little bit challenging at the start.
Yeah.
But she was very smart in terms of making a move to work at the most popular cafe in Byron in order to meet people. So I might have been a little bit more strategic in terms of what I could have done to put myself in environments to meet more people.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, because I did that when I first quit my job in Sydney. I went and worked at Three Blue Ducks in Bronte.
Yeah, I remember you did that.
And it was just like just scraping plates, meeting people, chatting, blah, blah, blah. But then I think when I moved to Byron, by then, because I'd kind of half done it, I almost felt like it was a regression by then.
Yeah, totally get that.
Does that make sense? I think, because I was like, it would have made logical sense. Even though I was often working at cafes anyway, even though
I don't socialise.
I don't like coffee and you don't like people. So core difference here between Blake and I is Blake can sit in a dark room that is just sterile with white walls, almost like a asylum if you were in prison. Sit there for 8 hours a day and just churn out work. While me, in a beautiful cafe with some people around, little sip of cafe latte, bit of a chit chat over here, then back in and zone in, like total different what we need in terms of environment to operate at.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need a bit of quiet time and zone in, but it's quite funny how contrastedly different and how we
Whole opposites. There's a lot in that. So step by step, if someone step by step of getting out of a stressful rat race, what would you let's workshop it together.
Yeah.
How would you start?
First, regulate nervous system. Just point one is, what are you doing daily to regulate your nervous system so that any of the work that we do moving forward lands and sticks, and you're more able to move into the unknown. So that's ground zero, is always like, what are we doing here? Is it, well, for me, it's always using meditation. So there's the specific style that I work with, part one. And then also having...
You know what I'd bring in before that is some kind of assessment to work out where I'm really at.
That would come in the pre-chat.
Yeah. Because you guys all said that I was fucking annoying and I was scattered and all those things for like, friends would have told me that for a decade while I was in Sydney. It's actually makes me feel a bit sick. Just how many people would have alluded to the fact that, mate, you're all over the shop for like a decade. So you even have to have a level of awareness and ownership to know that you're scattered as fuck. It's really interesting. I've been working with a client in Bali. It's interesting. I kind of have a chuck with him. I was like, how do you get stressed in Bali? But he started to identify some of his behaviors that bring to light that he's a bit dysregulated. He talks over the top of his friends. He's walking really fast when there's no reason to be walking fast. Like mate, credit to him. He's probably listed 12 red flags of himself that are showing when he's like dysregulated. So even that, your friends are probably, hopefully you've got at least one insightful friend who's probably telling you that you're fucking stressed, you're dysregulated, or there's symptoms that you get sick or whatever it might be that is bringing that to light.
Yeah. And again, which is why I go back to the first piece being meditation or breath, is because your ability, firstly, consistent practice in meditation will increase your awareness, self-awareness. So you're more inclined to be able to pick up on your own habits and patterns. Plus, it makes you more open to receiving feedback. Remember when I went to ask my parents after a few years of practicing, they were like, have I changed much? And their response was pretty clear that I used to be a fucking prick, to be honest. But anyway, it was like, but one of the biggest changes, they're like, I can tell you things and give you feedback, and you sit with it, as opposed to defensive off right away.
Wild, actually. I forgot that version of you.
Yeah, it's hard to believe because I'm just so put together now.
You were like a fucking fiery. You're like a pit bull, a fiery pit bull. You just wouldn't fucking take any feedback.
Yeah,
it's funny. Like, oh mate, if I think about our crew, and obviously you and I were 1 degree of separation back then. I'm just thinking out loud. You'd probably be the last person I'd give feedback to back in the day because you'd bite. You'd bite way too easy.
You'd know about it. And
yeah.
So I give credit to any friends. I have a few good ones who had the balls to call me out about things, which now I look back and like, thank you so much with love. But at the time I'm like, also fucking good on you, because I was not an accepting person of that.
Nah. You take feedback now. That's the difference. I mean, it's like if you really distill meditation down, and I'm not going to take your words, but I guess my experience, you move from autopilot to awareness, and you move from reactionary to responding. If I was to distill it down in the simplest of language for myself, that would be it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
And it takes a bit. It's funny. I spoke to Cam before this, one of our mutual clients, and we're talking about confrontation because he's kind of bringing in some communication tools into his business. And I was like, Janoah and I don't fight, because I think for most people, when they think about bringing in communication tools, whether it be with their partner or with work colleagues, their first thing is, I prefer to avoid conflict. Like their automatic response is communication equals conflict. And I was like, I kind of broke down you and I was like, I think we've had 2 fucking blow-ups, like proper blow-ups in 5 years. And the rest of the time, it was communication done in a very grounded, responding way. And for that reason, there was very few blow-ups. And generally speaking, the blow-ups are when something's had time to build up, because your delivery of it is poor and there's heat and there's energy behind it.
Let it fester and create stories around it.
That's what causes the conflict. Nervous system, I'd throw in there the identity piece. I think that's significant. You need to be able to break free from your identity that tells you you're a fucking superhero because you're stressed, or even the identity around like abundance and scarcity. Maybe you think it has to be that hard. A lot of people probably do. Nervous system, identity. What else would you throw in there?
Well, then you start looking at, I sort of tie the identity piece in with the vision work, because then it's like, okay, cool. Now we've started to regulate. We've started to see some more work. It's like, all right, so what do you think you want? And start pulling away those pieces. And then we start looking at, cool, what are the values aligned to that versus what are your current values and how do you behave? And then we start looking at, so as part of this vision, what's your purpose? Like, what's the impact that you want to have on the world? What lights you up? What gets you excited? How do you want to be remembered? And you start and this is where you start, this is a bit of self-reflection time. And then and this is which I actually love. I think you loved as well. I think you loved it more than one I've ever taken through. So one of the processes that
your why process,
unlocking your purpose or unlocking your why, one of the components of that is actually asking people that you trust in your network a whole pile of questions about you. And so normally with people, I'd say, ask 3 to 5 people, and 3 weeks later, Blake's like, I think you had like 55 people. Every single fucking person that I spoke to, like, oh yeah, Blake texted me about that.
I loved it. I fucking loved it. I went deep on it.
Yeah, but it's actually A, enlightening, but B, it's actually nice to hear what people value in you. Because often, and this is where when we talk about the idea of like genius and impact on the world, it's often, we don't realize it. Often the things that we do innately, and it's just the unique way that we do things, or the unique way we make people feel, that they're the powerful pieces. And to hear and I loved it too when I got feedback from people, and it's like, I love how you do this, and this is what I come to you for advice for. I was like, I am valued. People do see value in, and it was just that piece in itself is such a fucking amazing thing to look at and go, I never realized that by me just doing this small little thing here, how much it actually impacts all the people that I care about. Fuck, I need to do more of that. And then creating the safe environment for that person to also maybe throw a little reflection and like, this is something you could do better.
Yeah.
And also, you do these fucking things amazing. Here's room for improvement opportunity. That's our blind spot. And it's like, that there is an experience. How's that for fucking, a few years of therapy and feedback to have, and then to go, wow, okay, how can I use this? It's fucking great.
I feel like as well, that I love, the irony is that I'm an introvert who loves lots of connection. But it is in those exercises that you ran me through, exactly as you said, it's an opportunity for people to communicate how they really feel. Like, because they're not conversations. I mean, I'd love to have those conversations every single day, but the reality is that you don't. But to gain that kind of awareness from the outside looking in to you, it often looks different for how your own self-identity or how you identify. So, dude, it was so insightful to see common threads, and also really insightful to see, where there wasn't common threads and how different things kind of showed up amongst people. But yeah, it's a brilliant exercise.
And then because also in the end, like, we want to live a life that we enjoy, gives us energy, we feel valued, we feel significant. I mean, they're core, let's be honest, as human beings, that we feel connection. And when we start understanding the things that we do that provide that for us, we can spend more time in those areas, right? The things that naturally will make you feel valued, will be the precursor for connection, whether you realize the person's thinking that or not. And what we also often find is that, and this is what I used to have an issue where if things were challenging in my business, I would buckle down and like contract and stop doing all the things that I was great at because I hadn't associated them with success. They were like these fluffy things for me. And I was like, no, I just got to fucking send more emails and do more of this. And what I've realized is that when I'm able to stay in those behaviors and this high vibration of the things that I do that really have impact on the world and create value in the world, that's when value comes back to me. And so it's something I always got to try to remember. It's like, how can I spend more time doing the things that give me energy, that have a bigger ROI, that create value in the world, and spend as much time as I can there. But without that, you've got no map. and you're fucking floundering around like, what do I do? Why is something missing? Why am I not happy? Why don't I feel good? No one fucking loves me. No one thinks I'm good at anything, or whatever the stories might be. Even that in itself, just to do, regardless of any of the other work, it's just something cool to do.
Really cool. Big fella, if people want to find out your work, what you do, how they can work with you, where do we send them?
Mate, the best is on the IG, You might see a few videos of me dancing on tables. You might see a few little posts talking about purpose and vision. That's the best spot, mate. Really great.
What is your IG, just for those that don't know it off the top of their head?
Well, it's quite easy. Just spell my name.
Oh, yeah, there's not too many of you. There's not too many of you.
Van Kekem.
I can't even remember what I said at the start.
Janoah van Kekem. Janoah Vankekem for Mary.
You know what I've just realised for the first time in our long friendship? We're probably the only two. We're probably the only Blake Worrall-Thomspon and Janoah van Kekems in the world. Or do you know another Janoah van Kekem?
Nah.
That's kind of cool, don't you think?
Yeah, there'd probably be Blake Thompson. There'd be a few of them
heaps of Blake Thompsons.
Those fuckers, yeah, but
not Worrall-Thomspon, no.
No WTs around.
No WTs.
No Cardew double WTs. Or Elroy's for that matter.
Elroy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's us. Peace.